Today's episode comes with something we've not done before, a trigger warning, because today we are going to address the proverbial elephant in the room. So if you have young kids, please listen with caution or have them leave the room, because today's episode will talk about injury, death, mental health, suicide, and school shootings. So please, listen at your own discretion. And if this is one episode you just don't want to or can't listen to, we completely understand. We still love you all.
Welcome everyone to today's show. Boomer and Gen Xer walk into a bar, coming to you from the Rabbit Hole Studio, where you as our listener will experience some wit and wisdom, some smartassery, and a mother and daughter questioning. Are we even related? My name is Jane Burt. My co-host is my daughter, Bobby. Say good morning, Bobby.
Good morning.
And this is part 2 of The Elephant in the Room. We talked to you on part 1 about, as everybody is aware now, if you listen to part 1, school shooting that our family was involved in this year. And we're going to continue with where we're at now. And this is a happy time for us because you're going to find out that Corey is doing really well. So I'm just going to throw that out there right now. He is not doing as good as perfect by any stretch of the imagination because he still is going through a lot. But Bobby, talk to us about what happened once you got to the hospital.
Okay, so once we got to the hospital, I can say this. I walked in. I didn't walk in. I ran in. Found out the hospital was on lockdown in the worst way possible.
And I was about 2 minutes behind you
Yeah.
and found that same thing happening when they grabbed me, when the officer grabbed me too. So,
And once they kind of got me wrangled in, they said, you need to go to the chapel. And
Yep.
and this is where we're kind of staging, any of the parents and family members that are coming in.
And this was a trauma center in Des Moines. And I just have to say, I don't mean to
Yes.
cut you off by any stretch.
Mercy
but
Trauma Center.
It's a Mercy Trauma Center. And we could not have been more pleased with their service, their professionalism, and the trauma center professionals, doctors, nurses, everybody there.
all of them.
It was phenomenal, and I just can't say enough for that trauma center. Anyway,
Absolutely.
sorry, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, it's all right. So got into the hospital. They told me, we're going to go to the chapel. And at that point, my sister was there. My dad was already there. And literally not a few minutes after I had walked in, you walked in.
Right.
And that's where they staged us and said, we're getting them unloaded and we'll come get you.
Right.
And so, it gave us just a couple of minutes to
Pray.
For me, honestly, to really kind of breathe for a second.
Yeah. And I could feel that with you. Being probably the resident faith person in the family, my first instinct was to put my arms around everybody and say, let's pray. And we did. And we're just so grateful. And what happened next, Bobby?
Then we got to go back. We saw Corey. They didn't know all of the extent of his injuries, so they had to take him back for a scan. At that point, we were just kind of trying to focus on him and kind of piece together things of, his injuries and things like that. So got him a scan, and I was learning things as this was going along because I did have my son's phone at that time. And so, his phone was just going off left and right, just blowing up. His friends, Corey, please message us. Are you okay? Corey, where are you? Are you, because they knew he was in the lunchroom that morning.
Sure.
And unfortunately, 2 of his friends were actually sitting at the table with him and were both also injured at that time. So, you know how kids are. I mean, especially in a small town, that phone tag line is very short and it moves very quickly. So at this point, I'm focusing on Corey and what the doctors are saying. And at the same time, I'm gathering information off of his phone, my phone, everything we could. And finally, the doctors come back in and said basically the extent of his injuries. And so he had a total of 14 holes in him. At least 9 of them were entry wounds. So he was shot 9 times.
Right.
One bullet went completely through his right arm and broke his wrist.
Ricocheted off the bone.
Yep. Broke his wrist and left a bunch of shrapnel in there. And one bullet went through the side of his leg, right through behind his kneecap, blew his kneecap out, and actually broke his femur bone. So that was just 2 of them. And we found out that now this is going to be a little graphic here. So buckle up. One shot, he actually got shot in the groin, and that bullet was sitting, they believed, right behind one of his testicles. And they were afraid that the scan couldn't show the damage. They were afraid they were going to have to go in and remove his testicle at the same time that they were trying to fix his leg. Because the one that went through his leg, it decimated behind his knee. Absolutely just ripped it apart, left a giant air bubble behind his leg, broke his femur bone. And the rest of the bullets were his hips, the back of his legs, those kinds of things, and
his upper thigh also.
His upper thighs, yep. And just, we know now why he was shot where he was, and I'll share that with everybody later. But, at this point, we were just trying to get him situated. Is he okay? Did it hit any arteries?
Right.
Things like that. We knew we were looking at one surgery. With the one shot to his groin, we were worried about another one. But they said, we're going to get him into the surgery for his leg. And, before they did that, of course, they had to clean out all the wounds. And that was horrific. We did have everybody leave the room except Corey did ask me to stay. And I will never, ever forget that.
One thing I do remember and it was so traumatic. It's just hard to fathom that it could happen to you and your family. But Corey was laying there with 8 bullets in him.
Yep.
And he looked at Bobby and said, "I'm sorry, Mom. I'm sorry."
And at the time, I didn't understand because he had said that in the ambulance too. And then he looked at me and he said, "Mom, those kids were so small. I am so sorry. They were so small." And I'm thinking, my God, how many kids did he see get shot? And that was the first thing through my mind because he was out of it. He had a lot of blood loss at that point.
Right.
And, he was delirious. He was in shock.
We didn't know what he was saying.
We had no idea.
Later.
He just kept apologizing. "Mom, I'm so sorry." And I'm like, "Corey, why do you have to be sorry about?" And then he looked at me and he goes, "I think I should have done more." And I broke. I broke right there.
And this tells you about the character of my grandson. And it isn't just because he's my grandson, because I got some really shitty attitude grandkids. Don't laugh, Bobby, because the youngest one is yours.
Yes.
That have really, let's face it, some kids have really bad behavior and they have really bad attitudes, right? And some kids have really great attitudes, and some have just normal kid attitudes, and that's okay.
And some grow out of it,
and some grow
don't.
into it. Yeah, some grow out, some grow into it. And the fact of the matter is every day I am so impressed with the character of Corey. I have not seen such a loving, caring heart as this kid has. And
I will say his older sister that was there that day, I would say the same thing about her too.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
But in this context,
in this situation, and what we found out later, and I'm just going to jump ahead just a little bit here. What we found out later was that when the shooting started, Corey stood up to protect these other kids. And so he was saying, I'm sorry, because he felt he could have saved more.
And he was sorry because he got hit so many times covering these kids. He thought I was going to be mad at him. He thought
in some other parallel universe where that is okay. I don't know. But
he did. He stood up at the table he was at, and
he covered these kids.
He covered one of his friends that was at the table. And as he was running out of the lunchroom, and I found this out later through messages and things from other parents, from other witnesses, from the kids themselves. There was a group of middle schoolers who were coming around the corner, and it's an open air lunchroom. So you come around the corner, you can see the whole lunchroom. I mean, you're just right there. And they said that they had heard something, but they didn't recognize it as gunshots. And so they continued around the corner. And as soon as they came around that corner, Corey was right there. And he literally put his arms out and made himself as big of a target as he could and told those kids, you've got to run. You have to run.
There's a shooter. Yeah.
And I found out even later that the vice principal, who was in the lunchroom at the time, who ran for the office to sound the alarm, that there was a lockdown, there was a shooter. He came up to us last month and personally thanked Corey, because after we had watched all the videos and everything of that day, he had to watch them too. And he realized that Corey got hit as he was in front of the vice principal as well. Yeah.
So,
and then he ran out of the school on a broken femur bone, bleeding,
nine
bullets, and he ran a football field away to the stadium,
and still on the phone with 911.
And he was the first one. He was the first call to 911 that day.
So pretty amazing. We're not, and I'm just going to say that a lot of people have said, "Oh, he's a hero," and in my book, he is a hero. And in Bobby's book, he is a hero in our whole family and anybody who knows him. And one of the things that his grandfather had said, which I didn't even think of at that time, is he looked at me and he said, "Thank God he's 6'4". Yeah. And I said, "What?" And he said, "Had he been shorter, they'd have shot him right in the chest."
Yep.
Another thing to be thankful for, right?
Absolutely.
And so Corey and Bobby both did receive a lot of text messages, calls saying, "Thank you for protecting my child. Thank you for what you did." And Corey didn't know that that's what he was doing. And people have called him a hero. And he is a hero. There's no question about it. But with that, I just want to caution.
It's a heavy thing.
It's a heavy, heavy burden to bear.
And he's even said, he said, "Mom," he told me one day, he goes, "Mom," he goes, "everybody's calling me a hero." He goes, "How do I live up to that?"
Exactly. How do we had this conversation, didn't we?
He's now 16 years old. He turned 16
2 weeks after the shooting, wasn't
6 days after he left the hospital. Okay. And he's like, "Mom, I don't think I can live up to that." And I looked at him and I said, "Buddy, you already lived up to it."
Yeah. You don't have to live up to it.
There's nothing to live up to.
And that's what, we've really taken the time to talk to other people about this. And we've asked them, please don't put that label on him. We're very appreciative of what he did. We're very appreciative of him. We're more appreciative that he's alive, right? Yes. I mean, that's what our gratitude is and what our overwhelming blessing has been. But we have asked people, please refrain from calling him a hero, because this kid doesn't need to live up to a title. He did what he felt he needed to do at the time, a lot more than I would have been able to do, a lot more than you would have been able to do, probably. I mean, we don't know. Without even thinking, he did it. And is he a hero? Absolutely. He'll always be a hero in my book. But we just ask people, please don't make him live up to that. We want him to be a kid. We want him to be able to live his life as normal as he possibly can now. Now, with that said,
let's talk about that.
Let's
move forward here, and we're going to talk about.
Let's talk before we do that, Bobby. Let's talk about how many were injured, and we had some deaths. We had a couple of deaths in that shooting. So let's talk about that real quick. How many were there?
So there were 2 deaths total.
And that was the principal?
So, the first death was the 6th grader.
A boy.
11-year-old. His name was Amir.
Okay.
And he died immediately. And he was the first one who was shot.
Okay.
The second one was Principal Dan Marburger. He confronted the shooter after everybody heard the first shot and they kind of realized what was going on. He confronted the shooter. He was shot multiple times in the face, chest, and back. He survived for 10 days before he passed.
And then how many others were injured?
So there were a few injuries that were
superficial,
like, as a result of the running, the glass, things like that. But the actual shooting injuries, there were 4 children who survived.
Okay.
And Corey is my son. He's one of them. 2 of his best friends who were sitting at the table with him, and the little girl that was in the ambulance with us.
Okay. And so a lot of people impacted, a lot of families impacted with this shooting. And, I just want to touch on this. I don't know how much more you're going to go into here, Bobby, but, when some of the previous shootings occurred at the schools, you heard a lot of people say, did they really happen? I think it's a hoax.
Oh,
I think it's a political ploy.
The biggest, most heartbreaking one was Sandy Hook.
Yes. And I heard a lot of people saw it on social media and said, this can't be true because we saw these kids 2 weeks later, or, just things like it's not true. It's a political ploy. Let me make it very clear, folks. This is true. This is absolutely true. Our family experienced it. It will be something that has devastated us for the rest of our lives. So many families impacted in this community.
And a small community. A
very small community, primarily Hispanic community, and very poor community at that. They don't have a buttload of money. And it's just crazy. And here's the other thing that I do want to touch on too, and then I'm going to let you get to where Corey and Joey are now, okay? Is I knew this would happen, but I mean, when we were standing in the hospital, Bobby and I looked at each other and I said, we're not talking to the media. And she said, you damn right we're not. And the reason we're not talking to the media is because we know they're hate mongers. And the media is looking for a story. They don't give a rat's ass about you and I, how our kids are doing, what's going on in the community. I'm terribly sorry, but you're hearing the boomer come out in me now. But they don't give a crap about us.
I agree.
All they want is a story. And if hate can draw a story, that's exactly where they're going.
And they're going to twist it.
And then after that, somehow it'll be our fault.
Yep.
And so Bobby and I looked at each other and I said, we're not talking to the media. And she goes, no, we're not talking to the media. And we made that promise and we didn't. We didn't talk to the media. And we had some pretty high level media people nationally
within
contact
that first week.
us. I don't know how they get our cell phone numbers, but they can get them. And they contacted both Bobby and I don't know who else. Doesn't matter. But they asked us for a story, and we immediately said no and hung up. We had the local folks ask us. We immediately said no. We had people say, if you talk to the media, especially the national media, you would get more national attention. Yeah, you know what? They'd turn it on us. bullshit. That's bullshit. So terribly sorry to say it that way, but that's exactly what it is.
And that's not the thing to say to a parent who has a child in the hospital. We don't care.
Right. We don't care at that time.
Our life is in that room.
Right. And so we said no. We said absolutely not. We're not doing it. Now here's the saddest part of this is that immediately people start collecting funds. And I knew this would happen the second I started hearing so-and-so or this bank is collecting money for these families. Those families don't get that money.
No, it's been a battle.
It's been a battle. It's been almost a year, and you haven't seen a dime, have you?
We just now, within the past month, have gotten it going, let's say, on distribution of the funds and who deserves them.
But that's only one
things
location,
like that.
right?
That's correct.
There are multiple people collecting funds.
Now,
Where those funds went, we have no idea.
I will say there was one person, and she stepped up, and she said, yeah, if you guys want to donate, I will make sure the families get it. That was the only person who showed up at that hospital with gift cards and food and gas cards and anything else that she could collect for the families
because
to make it easier for us.
These families had to take care of their kids. They couldn't go to work.
No.
You're a single mom. She couldn't go to work.
Nope.
She almost lost her job because of this. She couldn't go to work. Those bills still had to be paid. And I will say, thank God for the angels here in our own family and in our own circle, because we immediately put a QR code out there and said, I want you to know this is only for my kid and my grandson and granddaughter. Please know we are not doing this for the community. I'm asking you, if you want to help, please do. And God bless our family and our friends who stepped up and provided funds to help you get where you needed to be.
Absolutely.
So you could get back to work.
Absolutely.
And had that not happened, it would have been a sad situation. So
we'd be homeless.
Real quickly, let's talk about where Corey is. Yeah. Real quickly, we're running out of time, and I didn't mean to keep going.
It's okay.
But let's talk about where Corey's at now.
Corey has had 2 surgeries on his knee so far. Unfortunately, we may be looking at a third.
Right.
We're not sure just because of the pain level. Corey still has 7 bullets in him. He has a multitude of areas of shrapnel.
And they can't take him out now. They can't.
No.
So
he would do more damage
the rest of his life with those in him.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. But when if they do work themselves to the surface, we're going to go in, we're going to get them, we're going to get them out of him. But it's mentally, all 3 of my kids that were there with me and there that day, it's a struggle. It's a struggle.
Every day.
A lot of the military veterans, things like that, have reached out to Corey, thank God, because they know what he's going through.
Right. And I didn't mention those groups. We had a lot of the bikers.
Yes.
Our families are motorcyclists, and we had a lot of the bikers. And they contributed a lot. And, and they came to the door. And I mean they came to the door.
Literally pulled up at our front door.
Absolutely. They did everything they possibly could. We had a lot of those folks who stepped up for us, too.
Yes.
So thank you. All I can say is thank you to everybody, because we had so much love come forward for us, and we appreciate it so much. I'm sorry, Bobby.
No, it's okay. But the surgeries, he's still in physical therapy. We're almost 9 months out now, and he's still in physical therapy.
Still in a lot of pain.
Nightmares, flashbacks. Both the older kids have them. They go to therapy. All 3 of my kids go to therapy once a week minimum. That was required. I said, you're not getting out of this. We're starting therapy immediately.
Right.
And we're going until we need to stop.
Yeah.
If it's 10 years, if it's 20 years, this is a lifelong thing. Corey's never going to run normally again.
Right.
Corey's never going to play sports.
Right.
He's never going to do a lot of things, but working through what he's going to have to working through what both him and his sisters are going through, and myself and you as well.
Absolutely.
It's going to give him the opportunity to hopefully one day be able to reach out to someone else. I mean, God forbid this happens again, but let's be real. Let's be real.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Hopefully this is going to allow him to be in a position to reach out to a kid, because there's no playbook for this. It's not like there are, hundreds of thousands of people who have experienced this. Thank God it's a very small number. It's growing every day, but it's a very small number that knows what he's going through right now. And hopefully that leads him to a path of where he can eventually step out of what he's going through and help others.
Absolutely. And he would be a great person to do that, to help other people to deal with any type of trauma that they've had, such as this. So,
yeah. And the main thing is, he's just really got to get healthy himself.
Absolutely. So again, we're very thankful. That's our story. And, there's a few other things that we're going to touch on in later shows, because, gun control and where we stand with that, right? Because we had a lot of people who ask us about that after the shootings, and I think you'll be surprised as to what our position is today. So I think we're out of here for today, Bobby.
I think so, and we appreciate all of you joining us here at the Rabbit Hole Studio. Be sure to follow us. We look forward to spending time with you each week. Please like us, and if you have a positive feedback for us, or if there's a show topic that you think that we should touch on, drop us a line at boomerandgenxer@gmail.com. And if you have hate mail, well, you know where you can put that. So until next week, I'm Bobby Joy.
And I'm Jane Burt.
And you're stuck with us.
Peace out.
Later.